Yeah, welcome to this next Casual Conversation podcast. Really excited to be here. Um, I'm always excited for these casual conversations because it's a way to give expression to some of my deeper truths and those of for you as well. I think, Marlou. Um,
Mhm.
it's just nice to be able to have a conversation, but in the context of bringing something out there for others, for those of you listening to receive and to learn from and to grow from,
Yeah,
right?
to be taken on our journey,
Mm,
where we share what we are going through and
yeah.
the stuff that comes up, which brings and the awarenesses around it,
Yeah.
which brings often healing, and for us to go through some of the layers and on this awakening path, and then yeah, to benefit or to make it into something beneficial. And that's why we're sharing these pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that we were talking about in the moment before this topic came up to make a podcast on was we were just talking about today was really a manifestation of the struggle with daily life in um, on the spiritual journey towards a deeper connection with ourselves, as well as making that, let's say, balance out with the rest of our normal daily life. And often I find myself in that place when we talk, Marlou, as you know. And so I wanted to make a
Mm,
podcast of this, not from the perspective of having the answers to anything, but more from the perspective of what is our experience, our perception, and what are our learnings in those areas that may help those of you that are also struggling with seeming paradoxes between being and doing, and how do I make things happen when I'm a sensitive being, and what things do I need to do, and when is my mind taking over, and what's going on, and what are the deeper things that are going on here. So this is the stuckness, representing the stuckness in life, and that can go quite deep. It can go very deep, and you can get really,
mm,
let's say, right, you can get really stuck in a deep rut or a hole. And if you don't have help, paradoxically, on the one hand, it's, and there's so many different philosophies on how to approach this. If I were to take what I get as input, everybody has a different perspective. Whether I go to a coach, you'll get the perspective, take actions and make goals. When I go to a spiritual teacher, he'll say, if they're very spiritual, it's not about doing, it's transcending the inner state of being into a higher place. That's the
mm,
journey. And when I go to my sister, for example, who's a medical doctor, she'll say, "Well, you feel depressed. You're not doing enough. You need to get a job." It's everyone has a different perspective, and if you don't know what to listen to within yourself, or even worse, in a way, if you've experienced so much confusion and things not working out, and you've been traumatized and you've been gaslighted and abused in the sensitive and vulnerable parts of yourself, as I and you have experienced in some way as well, Marlou, then who do you even listen to? And when you do listen to people, it becomes an external listen. You're listening to someone, an external voice that's telling you something, and it may not even necessarily be your own voice. So
mm,
you can get really stuck into into these seeming paradoxes between what is now actually really something that I feel inside, that I can access, that I can also really do something with if I wanted to, and do I even need to? So those are the types of questions that I, right, that I sometimes come with. And what's your answer, Marlou?
yeah.
Putting it all on
It's
you.
like, is this it's like this pain or this like knot in your stomach you're carrying with like this ball of thread, and all these strings are, the different strings are out, you know, and which thread do you need to pull to get to the answer on
Mm-hmm.
this,
Mm-hmm.
to get on the answer of uh this struggle of um yeah, this question is like, it seems like this eternal question, this eternal struggle,
Mm-hmm.
and which string you need to pull. And yeah, there are so much distractions. um there's so much help, things you can do. You go on YouTube and you know you can find like thousands of different answers for
Yeah.
your so-called problem, and
Yeah.
you can uh, watch a YouTube and then, okay, this piece is true, and then the next day you find yourself in the same like rut, and then the same pieces come up,
Yeah.
and it seems like this uh, identity of your life is like, you know, still the same, and you get this like tiny little answer from somewhere, and then it helps, but it's like a drop on a hot plate, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you never seem to get there. And um yeah, it's yeah, where do you begin, and what are we stuck in,
Mm-hmm.
essentially,
Mm-hmm.
and how can we separate that feeling of stuck, of this like cloud around us that feels the same, and then how can we get to an inner state
Mm-hmm.
slowly and feel good about ourselves again.
Yeah.
And then we need to have a sense of being uh, fulfilled, no, not fulfilled, but uh, bringing up the light within, that like, but like turning the light switch, the light bulb, like into a
Mm-hmm.
more brilliant state, and then
Mm-hmm.
you have a sense of like, now I can push out all the stuff, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And how do we get there? It's
But is that really the goal? I mean, again, this piece is, yeah, that is an inner state of being that I would like to believe is the state in which I'm expressing, and on the inner sense, which I can often access, or I definitely bring through into what I do when I bring a meditation or I help you or a client, is I could be bringing out my brilliance, let's say, to, and
mm,
I would feel it, but on my own, I have a struggle holding on to that state. And especially when, and I guess for me, I would say some of the things that come up to share in response to what you said, Marlu, in this conversation is I will I will diminish and I will lose myself and I will lose density of my beingness state of that
mhm,
brilliance when
mhm,
I'm not in motion and feeding myself, nurturing myself through being of use in giving to others or bringing myself out. And that density loses. And because my frequency state of being is very high, negative, it's, I really see the image of, for those of you who watched the movie The Hobbit, you know, the prequel to Lord of the Rings, where Gandalf fights with light and dark, and he's obviously the wizard that represents a lot of the light. But when he's fighting the dark on the bridge, he's fighting that Sauron, the enemy, the representation of all that is dark.
mm,
He needs to hold up his shield of light in order to not let the darkness come in to him.
mhm,
And in that representative scene, he cannot hold that on long enough, because as good as he is, at a certain point it wears him down, and the darkness comes into him and it takes over and it destroys whatever. So that is very much that movement daily, the battle almost with these forces that, on the one hand, and this goes very deep, this is a very advanced topic. For some of you, this may go way too far, and you may not notice this, but it is at play. And I'm just mentioning it because it's my journey in that sense, and it's also your journey, I think, in a certain way, Marlou. But it's the question becomes, there's so many paths to enlightenment in the sense of what that is, that representative state. It's not a fixed state that we achieve. It's a constant dynamic situation. And at some point it wears you down, like in that movie scene. It wears you down, and then it takes over again and you lose. And it's that feeling of, is this going to last forever, or is there going to become a new, yeah, I don't even, and that's why I said at the beginning of the process, I don't know the answer, because I don't like teachers that tell you that they do know the answer, because I feel like, no, because it's a journey, and it's the more I embrace the present moment and come back to myself and not lose myself in whatever happens, which is hard, the more I seem to remain a bit more stable. And from that place, things can grow into something maybe better. And that's a very tough pill to swallow when you get confronted with all your own fears and all your own pains and all your own struggles, and they weigh, and you have no way out except to go through them every day. It can, and that's this. So that goes very deep into my personal journey, but it's something that maybe some of those people and you resonate with, and I'm wondering what you have to share.
Yeah, I think it's very relatable. And I think a lot of people can feel what we're talking about in, like, now this daily life has been, you can experience like this phase of like this fight, of feeling really good, and then suddenly something happens or whatever, and you can get into a low point again with yourself, and feel you have this back and forth pool of heaviness, and then also clarity about your life and unclarity. And I think in your case it's also about the what you the density and the concentration of your inner light. You feel like kind of like shattered, and it's all over the place, and it's you lose yourself because you're everywhere with your energy. And then when you pull yourself together and concentrate to yourself within, into your heart space, your center, it's like this, you have to force yourself to go within.
Yeah.
It feels like you're getting stretched out in everything, and then it feels like you're if you're very sensitive, then maybe you're picking up a lot. You feel all the kind of heaviness, or everywhere your your energy has been floated off to, and then you have to like switch back again to yourself. And for some, this is kind of natural and more easy. And if you have a lot of thoughts, and if you feel heavy around your thoughts and negativity and stuff,
as well.
yeah, negative associations and a heavier feeling about your life, it can be tough to go within. It can also be like this kind of like this addiction pattern of your mind,
Mhm.
where you lose yourself, and then it feels like it's not so easy to go back within.
Mhm. It's like an elastic band that stretches out,
Yeah,
and when you've stretched it out too much, and the band itself has been damaged, it's
yeah,
very the elastic is no longer returning back to its natural shape. It's no
yeah.
longer
It's
going
harder to
back,
pull it in.
contracting back inward, and you
Yeah,
have to fight a battle when other stuff has been taking over. You have
yeah,
to claim your space back all the time. That's what the journey becomes.
yeah,
And that's and then there's also a paradox there where, do you need to fight battles to claim your own space, or do you need to not fight any battles to claim your own space? So it becomes even more
mhm,
difficult, because you have to, because part of the whole idea that you have to battle to fight your space back is a struggle that becomes a pattern, that becomes an addiction of the mind to not
mhm,
really be in your own space. So so it further splinters up, so it gets difficult, it gets really difficult sometimes. And it's a navigating through all these nuances, and then there's all these deceptions in the world as well. And honestly, there's all these teachers with different perspectives that don't tell you the whole story for you as an individual, that needs specific things that are applied to you and that may not apply to others, and vice versa, in
yeah,
order to make it through to that other side. If you have a journey of a lot within, and then on top of that, not to make it more complicated, but there's also addictive patterns, in the sense that parts of you, or if I were to speak about myself, parts of me that seek attention, that want to create the drama and the battle to distract me
mm,
from being with myself, because it has been so unsafe. And I really feel that in myself, reminding myself of that when I
mhm,
was younger, that being in a quiet, peaceful, self-connected place, and you can talk about this, Marlou, as well, was very unsafe. So then it becomes a lifetime struggle of defending yourself around yourself, like outside of the center of your being, let's say,
mm,
on a
mhm,
space-time coordinate level. You're outside of the center of your being, and you're always, from the perspective of the outside, you're trying to defend your territory by never actually living your own territory as yourself. And
mm,
at the more awake and conscious levels of being, that starts to drain and affect you a lot more, because it prevents you from accessing and harnessing the inner power to not only withstand negativity from the outside, let's say, but also accessing the power of the things that are good, that you want to feel and be with, in order to use that in any positive, beneficial momentum forward in any direction, or anything you want to do. And so it's really tough. I mean, I come back to it's really tough, and for those of you that are also experiencing some of this, it's really tough.
yeah. I think we have also a lot of like trauma loops in our system.
Mm-hmm. So
Um,
what do you mean by that, for the people that don't know?
um, well, we can find ourselves in these repetitive states of
Mm.
maybe anxiety or
Anxiety, yeah.
really negative thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
or something, a thought comes in and you can get really triggered, or it pulls you in a state, or
Mm-hmm.
uh, we have these unresolved stuff in our system,
Mm-hmm.
and and we experiences those negative states.
Mm-hmm.
And what if it in essence is like this trauma loop, that your body is really like showing up for you,
Yeah.
uh, like make expose for you, so you can go and find a solution, or
Yeah.
if you are unaware of these pieces. And I think where these pieces, these trauma, let's call it that, is like pushed out to the surface,
Yeah.
and our mind goes off with all those stuff like, oh, okay, this is bad and this is a negative state and I have to fix it because this is not good.
Yeah.
But what if your body is like pushing it out and you're processing it?
It's like
And
ungrooving the groove. It's trying to help you to ungroove the groove that's there by you lose yourself in the groove of the loop
yeah,
in order to try and at some level when you become more aware and you go to those higher resonances as we were mentioning before in the podcast, it starts to work in your favor in the sense that the loop is not re-traumatizing you. Hopefully it's beginning to take you out of that loop by
yeah,
feeling
yeah. And it's very hard because you can stay stuck in this like uh when when you're stuck in a mindset of I need to heal and I
it.
need to like heal this.
Hmm.
And you're if you're always like feeling the piece of this is the feeling that needs to be that it needs healing, and I have to like think about it with my mind, and then
Yeah.
it never gets the room to actually being transformed
Hmm.
in the moment that it comes up. And sometimes it's really hard because you cannot on your own. It's sometimes very hard to feel the compassion for yourself
Yeah.
for whatever is coming up. And then the loop is the trauma is that you are maybe judging yourself for that
Yeah.
it is coming up. And
Yeah.
maybe a feeling in your body is really come to the surface again and again, and
Yeah.
you do laundry or whatever, or making dinner, and these things come back, and
Yeah.
you feel like, yeah, here is the piece that needs to be healed, and this is the
Yeah.
piece that I want to get rid of,
Yeah.
and there's a very big lack uh, in our system that we can't even feel the compassion
Yeah.
and love for our own trauma loops. And
Yeah.
that in itself is, um, is
This is
blocking us.
again another trauma loop cycle within the trauma
Yeah,
loop. So it becomes,
exactly.
yeah, and this is why it's so difficult. And for that, by the way, for those of you interested in compassion, as which is a big source of the healing, if you can allow yourself to feel it, we made a podcast earlier in which I did together we did a meditation on that compassion. So maybe you want to look back at that specific episode in order to um, develop that feeling of compassion. You can redo the meditation more often, but yeah, and I would also say in my case, what often happens, and then I could use your help in that, Marlu, which you do very well because you have a very strong access to that compassion. When I lose compassion for myself in a place where
Mm,
I feel like I am brought back to an earlier feeling that is not very clear to me because I don't have memories or like it's very young, and it's also very hazy in the sense that I don't have a strong memory because there's all these things that happened in my childhood that I couldn't comprehend or I couldn't experience or take in properly as like clarity that I could remember for whatever
yeah,
reason. We don't have to go into that now, but
process,
I
you know.
I I I feel the lack of empathy that was there for me in those places from the outside, which
Yeah,
became an internalized place of anger towards not receiving the love and the support that I needed, which then became the lack of compassion for myself in that place and not
mhm,
feeling it because I wanted it from the recognition and the acknowledgement from the outside world as that loop reinforced itself in my
yeah,
life by re-experiencing the same trauma and the same helplessness where other people couldn't help or actively moved away from helping in the moments when I
yeah,
next it most. That is a
exactly.
very big groove for me that I'm still, after many, many, many years of realizing it, working through the details of in order to feel it and allow
Yeah,
myself
and then
to.
you're stuck in
And then you get,
this
yeah, yeah,
in this ex in this whatever it is, this is some kind of memory in your system from your childhood that's
Yeah.
still there. And you're still, it's everything is in a now moment, you always
Yeah.
say, it's
Yeah.
everything, what happened in your life,
Well,
it's
yeah,
all
some
like
people,
recorded in your body, in your cells, in your very
yeah,
deep
some
down.
people say that, like, well, this happened in the past. Why is it still relevant now? Forget about your childhood, but they don't realize that maybe when you have a dormancy in your system, when you're not awakening yourself to higher levels, these pockets of traumatic experience can sort of stay dormant. But when you
Yeah.
go to these levels, these pockets need to heal, so they come up and they're still active now as if it was still the same time, because there is no separation between that time and now if it's still in your cells, like you were saying. So that argument doesn't really work. Yeah, so just to nuance that.
Yeah, so you're experiencing this piece that is coming up, and then you're just totally in it, then you can feel like this the lack, you experience the lack of self-love, of
Mm-hmm.
compassion,
Mm-hmm.
of whatever you experienced wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes like this unsafety mechanism for your system. When it comes
Mm-hmm.
up, it's like your body gets in a state of, oh, unsafety, and then you pull out of yourself, and then your everything can come in, and that's even feels even safer to your system than going back within and
Mm-hmm.
feeling what's been stuck there.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. It is exactly that.
and you lack the compassion for yourself to feel that you even need compassion in a
Yeah.
moment. And
Yeah. And then the irony becomes, this is where this part of the spiritual journey becomes interesting, is that people will say, well, you need to learn to feel it for yourself. And that's true. But you also need a model sometimes with an awareness or a feeling level shift, as I call it, in order to help you access that within yourself. And so sometimes you get stuck because you don't have that access to that um, state or that
particularly
imprint of feeling
yeah,
compassion, as you never were modeled to feel that compassion for yourself in those moments when things got very
yeah,
intense and
in
disconnected,
those,
right?
yeah, in those trauma moments, the to get out of it, there wasn't the source for you to get out of it, to feel the compassion or whatever, it wasn't there. So you need, that remembrance is needed in your system, for your system to like transform that piece. And if you're
Yeah,
get really stuck when you never get to a source that can like model the how it needed to be, and
yeah,
for you to transform and bring
yeah.
the safety.
So let's fast forward for a moment in the last few minutes of this podcast. Let's say you get to the place of feeling compassion in the example that I gave of myself in this. And the compassion comes there, and you come back to a lighter state of feeling stable, steady, and peaceful. Then what? Because then the question I can think of myself having, that I often have in those moments, is then, okay,
Mhm.
there's no pain and suffering and misery, or whatever you want to call it, of the trauma
Mhm.
loops that are at the moment they have received the attention through love and compassion that they needed. That doesn't translate automatically to now everything's good, because there's still a life of movement needed, and there's still choices needed to be made, and you still need to do something with your energy. And what is that piece? The question becomes, maybe that is too much for this podcast, but these questions I have that I never see properly answered is, what then? What is life really about? And of course, that's the discovery, but it's also at the same time is, does it even matter what you do or don't do?
Mm.
And is it because some teachers and healers, practitioners and gurus and whatever you want to call them would say that it is about transcending that inner state to a higher place of being. That is, it's a transcending of the mind, and you come out of that place, which we could say includes feeling compassion. So, but then what? Because then you still need to find something to, I mean, this is too much for this podcast maybe, but there's still that
Yeah.
place of how do you engage in a way where you nourish yourself so that you have fulfillment and more happiness in your life. That's not
Mm.
automatically there just because you have transcended that inner state. And this is the piece that I find, let's just say,
Yeah.
many practitioners and teachers don't help you with that piece. And if
Yeah.
that piece is your struggle, what then?
I think you're referring that piece to your heart
Mm-hmm.
and your heart space.
Mm-hmm. In a way, yeah.
Because you're looking to shift from that mind state more into your heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's what and you have a feeling of like uh emptiness or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
there's this feeling of emptiness there,
Yeah.
and like maybe you have to feel this emptiness in your heart,
Yeah.
like, oh, how, and then feel compassion for yourself, like, oh, how empty you even feel,
Mm-hmm.
because that's
That's
like
true.
uh,
That's very true.
these are
Yeah.
these like difficult pieces, and you have to give again yourself a bit more compassion,
Encouragement
and
as well.
and a bit more rope, you
Mm-hmm.
know, on
Leeway.
your
Yep.
healing
Yep.
journey. You have to
Yep.
give yourself more rope, because the pattern then becomes like your mind is like, and then what?
Yep.
And the rope is again, it's already gone.
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
it's
It's
sometimes
very,
hard to give yourself rope, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's very true. This is the, so it comes back to compassion again. And so quick, you can move yourself out of that place. Uh,
Yeah.
and cut yourself some slack in English, right? It's like giving yourself some space, giving yourself that bit of rope. um,
Yeah.
and that space in order to feel deeper into the emptiness. That is the next level of fear, of the emptiness, the no, the nothing, because that is part of the awakening as well, which I definitely recognize. So that's very well spotted. And maybe this is a good point for now to begin to round off, unless you have something else to share. But one thing I want to share before you do is notice, for all of those of you watching, notice how Marlou, if you have watched the episode a few episodes back, where we actually I did a one-on-one with Marlou, and I helped her move through some of these more vulnerable pieces of her journey, how much more clarity and how much more compassion, but also clarity comes through in her communication, in the way that she's able to discuss and bring up, like I really
Yeah.
notice it. So I wanted to bring it to the awareness and the attention of the group, because those are the pieces of encouragement that I think that I would have wanted in these places, and I do sometimes receive, and definitely from you, but that I think is so missing in society in those moments which we're describing, when things become so stuck and tough, that we have that
It's
encouragement of people giving us some of those frequencies that we struggle with so much in order
yeah,
to move
too
further.
hard for ourselves.
Yeah.
We're often too hard for ourselves. I think the people that are on a healing journey are often most the people who can very easily feel compassion for others.
Yeah.
You have a lot of bandwidth for compassion for others, but you have maybe very little rope and compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Because you
another like,
experience everything. Those people tend to experience everything so much deeper because they're
yeah,
hypersensitivity, that they've internalized a lot more of
yeah,
the abuse in that is literally playing out all
yeah,
over the world,
and asking for help
and
is
asking for
then
help
very
is
difficult.
difficult when you've
And
been disappointed and rejected and
yeah,
neglected. Yeah.
you can like really believe that nothing is helping, but
Yeah.
if you go back and watch the session we did, where I like um, shared my space of this imbalance in masculine and feminine,
Mm-hmm.
where I lacked this structure of this healthy masculine imprint for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's already have shifted some, there has shifted so much for me internally.
Yeah.
And that shifted my whole like experience, like within like, when was it, 2 3 days? It's like, and it can go very fast, and you can
Yeah.
really make big leaps. And
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the beauty of it, of the supporting each other process that I really like. Well, that's a beautiful ending. And anything you want to add, Marlou?
No, I think just let it sink in,
Yeah.
everything what, and
Yeah. That's and this is an ongoing discussion, and by no means are we finished. Of course, this is just an introduction to the introduction of a discussion that could go way deeper. But it's hopefully brought you, as the listener, a lot of wisdom, compassion, understanding, and some of the perspectives of well,
yeah,
really, for us to be an embodied example of some of the steps we've taken, so that you can begin to become to those awarenesses for yourself, to feel like, oh, maybe that brings you new inspiration, new goals, new feelings, new desires that
mhm,
take you onto that journey.
yeah,
So that's the aim here. So we're throwing you that rope that Marlou was talking about, in case you need some of that rope for yourself. So
yeah.
with that, let's end, and we'll see you again soon.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.